I'm John Bryan, and welcome to the Driven Podcast. We're here in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the Exposition Hall. We have folks coming in to look at the different booths, and today we have with us Jason Carlton. He's filling in with for Nathan Rogers, who had to be out today, but we're glad you're here, Jason.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Guys are doing good work.
Our guest today is Jeremy Valladares.
Valladares.
That's close.
Close enough.
And he's serving in McAllen, Texas.
Yes, sir.
Planting a church there, and is an instructor at the Mexican Baptist Institute in Reynosa, Mexico.
Right. So, Jeremy, I guess I had met you through our good mutual friend, Doug Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
And Doug calls you, what is it, the camper of the year?
Camper of the year.
Camper of the year because of your long treks from where you are to turn around and bring kids back and your commitment to that next generation. So I knew a little bit about you, and sort of through mutual friends, I knew a little bit about your ministry and a little bit about the accident that you endured. But it wasn't until last year's meeting in Springfield when we came in, and I was excited to hear you speak. I always like to finally get to hear somebody speak. But man, I was blown away just by your story, what you've been through, and then the passion to relate that to not just your situation, but all of our situations, how we can leverage those things. So really what I want to happen today is for anybody who wasn't there, and maybe it's a good reminder for those of us who were, but take us back to not just the accident, but the meeting last year and sort of your story, your journey, your process, and what God did through that accident to bring you where you are today.
All right. Well, last year was for me kind of like a closing of a chapter, in my life, because I got a chance to, I would say, on the biggest stage in our association, to share the story, share my gratitude for the churches that helped out when everything happened. But I'll take you back, and we'll start off in December 12th, 2013. I was in Mexico in the Yucatan Peninsula, and we were, myself and a seminary friend of mine, we graduated together, Brother Ramon Mendez. He's a missionary pastor in Playa del Carmen, and he's sponsored by First Church in Bakersville, California, Pastor Brian Langley. We were out in December. It was December 12th. We had gone from Playa del Carmen. We had stopped at about 5 or 6 different towns, talked to different pastors, and had agreed to set up mission trips for the summer. We were going to come back and bring my seminary students and the teens from my church. And what I do every summer is I like to invite teenagers from all different churches, people that I meet at camps and different places, to come do mission trips. I was raised doing mission trips with my father, and so I believe, I think somebody said there was a statistic that 76% of the people on the mission field right now went on a mission trip.
Oh, wow.
And so we were setting up mission trips, and we had gone to about 5-6 locations. We're traveling back to Playa del Carmen. It's December 12th. In Mexico, predominant religion is Catholicism, and they believe that December 12th is the birthday of the Virgin of Guadalupe, which is the Mexican version. That's a version of the Virgin. And so there was processions everywhere. There's people rolling around, walking along the streets on bikes. Some were barefoot, some were whipping themselves, some were holding posters and statues, and no lights, nothing, no way to signal. They were walking down the road. It's just what they do. And they promised the Virgin to carry a torch from their hometown, the fire from their hometown, to another town. So we were traveling about a mile past the ruins of Chichen Itza, and an 18-wheeler was coming against us. But he didn't see the kids that were on the road till the last minute, so he jumps into our lane to avoid running over about 20 kids, throws us off the road, and pretty much in Mexico, if you've ever traveled, as soon as that line is right there, it falls off. There's no shoulder, there's no grace space on the road. And so we were off the road, and as soon as I tried to get back in the road, one of the tires hit a stump or a rock and caused our car to jump onto oncoming traffic, and the next 18-wheeler behind him hit us at about 55, 60 miles an hour head on, and then started, I guess, to someone who's traveled a lot in Mexico and extensively, that's your worst nightmare, because, care is primitive. It's a whole nother world. It's a third world country pretty much. So we wreck, and it's about 2 hours till they find us. all of these little towns. We're 2.5 hours away from from Cancun. We're 2.5 hours away from Mérida, which is the capital of Yucatan. And so we were 2.5 hours away from civilization. So all these little towns are having these processions because majority of the people in these towns, I'd say maybe 95% of the people in town are Catholic. So it's like pretty much like a parade, pretty much like 4th of July celebrations going on in every town. And even the ambulance drivers are, celebrating or getting drunk or doing stuff like that. So it took him 2 hours to find us. Both my friend lost consciousness. He had a concussion. He broke both his femurs and his tibia, broke his shoulder. Myself, the steering wheel came down on my legs and I broke both femurs. The impact hit us on the side to where my legs swung up and broke it. They didn't twist at the knees, they twisted at the femurs. So when our car stopped, I didn't lose consciousness. I'm looking at the bottom of my feet. Arm broke the window. Knuckle broke the window and arm hit the body of the car, and then it snapped the radius, and windshield came into my face, sliced my face, my hip got broken, and it was just sitting there, seeing my friend unconscious, trying to talk to him, trying to wake him up, knowing you're miles away from any help or any comfort was probably one of the lowest spots I've ever been in my life. And you call out to God and you're like, God, we were setting up mission trips. I just got done teaching seminary. First week out of, we went straight to set up mission trips. And you first thought that comes to mind is why. What did I do wrong? Is why? Just questions. Why? Well, that ordeal I can talk about it for hours, but they ended up taking us to a clinic where they proceed to sew this arm up with no anesthesia, and the guy's sewing me, and it's just painful. I ask them for pain meds, and they say we don't have any here. And they stitch me up. The guy says, I need to stitch up your face also, and he says I'll be right back. Well, it turns out he got off at 8, so he didn't stitch up my face, which was a good thing. And was there till midnight. At about 10 o'clock, I hear them say, we're losing him. And I was thinking they were talking about my friend. They said, we need to send him off to Mérida, to the capital. That way, if he dies on the road, at least we were helping him to get to help, and he won't die on our watch, and we're not responsible. Well, while I was in this clinic, the federal police came in and asked me if I was driving. They asked me the story, and they proceeded to handcuff me to the bed. The little details that I haven't shared with a lot of people, but they cuffed me to the bed, and then his wife gets there around 11, Ramon's wife, and they ask her, hey, do you want to hold him liable for what happened? And she said, no, it was an accident. She said, well, if you sign right here, we'll hold him liable by law. We'll keep him here till he pays for everything, and if your husband dies, well, then we'll hold him accountable. She said no. They take the handcuffs off, they put him in an ambulance, they sent him to Mérida. He got to Mérida with half his blood. I stayed there till midnight, and they said, there's nothing more we can do for you. I said, well, what do I do? I said, well, we can send you to Mérida, but it's $350. So out came the credit card and just charging. 3.5 hours later, I was in Mérida. My goal was to fly home, but they said that since my femurs were broken, they couldn't fly me, something about the air pressure. So there in Mérida, it cost me $1,000 just to get in the hospital, and I was there for a week. There was a lot of stuff going on at the time, phone calls coming, trying to get my family information, my father calling everybody, all the missionaries that are in the Yucatan Peninsula, help me find my son. My son's down there, and there was a lot of stuff going on. Interesting story, about 20 years ago, my father took a mission trip to the Yucatan Peninsula and took a group of Americans. Well, they met a young girl who was about to graduate high school and said, I want to be a seamstress. Well, somebody that was on that trip told this young lady, if you want to go to seamstress school, I'll pay for it. Just let Brother Al know. And so the next summer, my father came back, and this young lady asked my dad, do you remember who that was? And he was like, I don't know who it was. So my father paid for her seamstress school just because somebody had made a promise to her. He kept good on it. So that girl, when she got a phone call from my father, her and her sister were the ones that found me at that little clinic and that helped me do all the process of moving from one hospital to another. We got to Mérida, and I was there for a week. They did 2 surgeries on me. The first one that they did my right leg, they ran a rod up it. When I came out of surgery, I had an arrhythmia, and they couldn't control my heart. And here's how God had everything planned out. My wife flew into Mexico. She didn't have her passport because she just wasn't traveling much to Mexico. But about 2 months before, a good friend of mine said, why don't you come to Mexico and come visit? So my wife and my daughters all get their passports, and turns out he just ended up bailing on us. We didn't go visit him. My wife was like, we spend a lot of money for nothing. We have passports. So she had their passport. She came the next day. First surgery, I get out, I have an arrhythmia, and they say your heart's going crazy. And God was working all these little things out. I told my wife, what is my heart rate at? She said it goes from 80 to 150 and it's just going out of control. They're scared you're gonna have a heart attack. I said, no, I'm fine. She said, what do you mean you're fine? I said, last week I biked from my house to South Padre Island. I biked for 5.5 hours. My heart was like at 170. I'm good, I promise you. And little things you just see God in it. And my wife being able to be there with a passport, and my father meeting a young lady 20 years ago that he paid for her seamstress school, and in just me knowing my heart rate and monitoring my heart on the bike, and just knowing all these little things was God working in all things. Romans 8:28, we may take that verse and saying, bad things, good things, but I promise you, I was in the deepest of the deepest hole, and I promise you all the things that happened, God had worked out. My church in McAllen, I'm a pastor there in McAllen, they got on the news. I cycle with a young lady who works at the news Channel 5 in McAllen, and a doctor was watching the newscast. Before those 2.5 minute segment was over, he had my phone number and called my wife and said, hey, I don't know you, you don't know me. I live in Harlingen, I'm flying you home. This was a man who, he's a head of trauma for a hospital. He saw the car, he said, you should be dead. He's also a heart surgeon. He also had stage 5 terminal cancer for 8.5 years. He also had given his kidney to his brother, and he said, I'm gonna bring you home. Flew me home, was my attending physician, paid about $37,000 cash. Said, I don't want a dime back, I just want to see you back home. We need more people like you at home. Just God working in all different things. Came back home, they said they did your surgeries wrong, we have to redo them. He said, my friend's gonna take care of it. His friend did the surgeries for me, fixed the legs, fixed the arm, fixed the shoulder, fixed the hip. I got a bill, $5,000. Just what they charged for the operating room. It just God working in all different ways. So tough time, tough ordeal, just God working in all things. A nursing home, the owners of the nursing home were Christians, and they went to a big church there in my hometown. They said, we saw your story, we don't know you, but you know some of the pastors at our church. They tell us you ride with them. They say you're a legit guy. What you're doing is real, and we want to help you. So we're going to take you to our nursing home. 2 weeks after being in the States, they take me to their nursing home. I was there for a month. I didn't get charged a dime. I walk out of there February 2nd. Gold's Gym, where I was a member, had put on a fundraiser for me because I had a lot of expenses, even just the hospital expenses. So they put on this fundraiser. I go to this fundraiser. My wife was a teacher for so long, and one of her students, her parents own a pharmacy, some medical supplies. They said, we need to get you a walker. And since I broke my arm, I couldn't get a regular walker. It had to be a special walker. They provide the walker. Gold's Gym puts on a fundraiser. I stand that day after 7 weeks after breaking both my femurs and having them rotted. And I stand that day and I take 12 steps. And then they say, you know what, we want to nominate you as our most inspirational member of the year. Just God working in all these ways, little things going on, to where in July, I won the most inspirational member of the year. They flew me to Las Vegas. I got to give a speech to 750 owners of Gold's Gym in Sin City. Got to tell them the reason why I'm alive, my health was important, but if was God not in it, I wouldn't be here today. And to me, God has just opened so many doors, given me so many platforms to speaking at the ABA, to speaking at Gold's Gym at the MGM Grand, to the convention, and telling them how God was the reason why I was alive, to having platforms in my city. On Thursdays, I give a devotional at a law office now. The attorney, we knew each other through cycling, but became good friends as he helped me fundraise after the accident. And just God has opened so many doors. There's, Mondays, a family at our church is putting on a Bible study. They came to church after the accident. Tuesdays, I teach at seminary. Wednesdays, we have Bible study. Thursdays is the office devotional, and that's opened so many more doors to go preach revivals and do so many things. The accident was a blessing. And last year at the ABA, at the national meeting that I got to preach the missions sermon, I pretty much just talked to the messengers and told them how life is precious, how next generation is important, how our message needs to be relayed, how in all things God works for the good of those who are called according to his purpose, and how he opens up doors for us that we could have never opened up on our own. I sometimes think back and I wonder what would have happened had this accident not happened. Would our church be where it's at capacity? Would I been given the opportunities to preach at the ABA? Would I been given opportunities to speak at a law office every Thursday for the last 2.5 years, give a devotional to businessmen, to doctors, to lawyers, to mechanics, to laymen, just anybody? And you look at all things and you say, God definitely knew what he was doing. Today, this morning I got up, jumped on my bike, was able to walk and go do an outreach with some people here at the ABA. We went to go feed some of the homeless and witness to them. And God's just awesome. And through all these little things that have happened, and especially the accident, God has just opened so many doors. And to meet people like you, to where, in a month we're going to be at BOG doing next week and going to be putting on a soccer camp in your backyard and trying to reach out to Hispanics, which is, I heard, 70-some% of the population in DeQueen.
Yeah, it was interesting as you were talking about Guadalupe and the parade. So on December the 12th, there is this massive parade because our town, the elementary school that my daughters attend in DeQueen is 75% Hispanic roughly, but they actually do that procession from Wicks to the Catholic Church, which is in 3 blocks down from my house. And so when you talk about that procession, I know exactly what that looks like because it goes right by my front yard.
Imagine that on 2-lane roads.
Yeah.
With chaos and beer everywhere in Mexico. That's what it was like.
One of the things that caught my ears about this, we just did Joseph in Bible school last week, and as I think about you in that car, your buddy unconscious, you're looking at the bottom of your own feet. I think about Joseph in the bottom of that well, and that's a very similar situation. That how in the world can anything come out of this that is possibly good? And I define to our kids that hope is the belief that something better can happen. And I can't say from this comfortable chair, I can't say I'm glad that accident happened to you because I didn't live all of the recovery that it took, but you own it. And for you to have been there and to tell us, I'm glad that accident happened when you have the scars, that's incredibly powerful.
The kids at my church, the ones that come now, are completely comfortable with saying, man, I'm glad this one kid, he's now our worship leader. His name is Ken. He's like, Jeremy, can I tell you something? I said, what's going on? He said, I'm so glad you had your accident. I said, man, if you were closer, I would punch you. It was a joke. But he was like, man, if you hadn't had that accident, I don't know if I would be in church. Yeah. Today, he's now married. We married him last summer to one of the girls from our church. And God's just working, in people's lives and through the accident and through, just like you said, owning it. Hey, it happened. Here's where we're at. And I think if a lot of us would just take that mentality, you know what? I can't do anything about the cards I was dealt. I'm here. It's what it is. Let's do the best that we can. The NLT version of the Bible of Ephesians 5:16 says, make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. And I like that verse because I share it with kids all the time. Make the most of every opportunity. Hey, you're here, you're at the bottom, you're stuck, you're in problems, you're in debt, you're in whatever it is you got, make the most of it. And they grasp the idea of, hey, if this guy's telling me not to complain about my details or my problems, why can't I do it? And I think if each and every one of us just took our pits and climbed out of them, I think people would say, you know what? I can learn something from this guy. I want to be like this person. They didn't take it. They didn't cry about it. They just said, hey, it is what it is. Let's do what God's called us to do, and let's go move forward from there.
Jeremy, your story inspires us. We're just so thankful that you came and visited with us. Would you stay and share some more about what is going on in your ministry?
Yeah, most definitely. Okay. God has opened so many doors, and I'd love to share where we're going and what we got planned, and just...
All right. We'd like to hear that.
Thanks so much for coming by. Come back and visit with us. We want to hear how the story continues.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you.